rolling. Just realized that's Vader on the back of your phone. Dig it.
Got it at Walt Disney World.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago. Are you ready?
Always.
Okay. Well, hello, my fellow Raiders, Doomers, Crusaders, and Scullies. We are back again for another Show and Tell Saturday, coming to you live from my lovely backyard porch area here in Fullerton. And I have a special guest with me. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I am Nathan Smith Findlay. I am one of the co-founders and admins of the California Jones group and Facebook page.
And we're just so excited that he's here. It's just so awesome to get to spend time with him and share like-minded Indiana Jones factoids and gear and all that sort of accoutrement. And I invited him to come out to have him show a couple of pieces of his Show and Tell Saturday. And as you can see, the showcase today is Indiana Jones jackets.
What would Indy be without his leather jacket?
Probably Indy with a shirt.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, like Streets of Cairo Indy.
Probably.
But we've got Last Crusade and Crystal Skull Indy, who just is never seen without the jacket.
Exactly. That is
actually,
very true.
Oh no, in the beginning of Crystal Skull, he does not have the jacket on.
Very true. But after that, then when Shia LaBeouf comes in and everything goes south, then that's when
everything goes south.
That's when Harrison Ford wears his famous jacket. But you're probably thinking, guys and gals, Harrison Ford wears the exact same jacket in all the films. It's not the case.
Nope.
Just the same as the differences and subtleties with the hats, just the same in the differences and subtleties with the boots and the whips.
And the shirts.
And the shirts. We also have subtle differences and nuances of the jackets, because no two jackets are the same. So today, I have brought my two personal jackets, and these are the only two Indiana Jones jackets that I own currently. This one is well, let's do a little bit of backstory about Indiana Jones and his jackets.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and take that away?
Well, when Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were coming up with the character, they realized that he needed a jacket. And throughout all of the casting calls and screen tests, every Indy was seen wearing an A2 bomber jacket. And it was very clear that was going to be the style, that was going to be the aesthetic that they went for. But they realized that the knit cuff and waist had to go, because in the terms of movement, while a bomber jacket is an incredibly comfortable jacket, I own one myself, that is made by Cooper Sportswear.
Perfect.
They're meant for one thing and one thing only, and that's sitting in a cockpit.
Right.
So freedom of movement is sometimes restricted if you're wearing a jacket that's fitted very much for your chest size, which a lot of them were. It was mainly with like the B-12, I think, that they were much bigger in size to accommodate more clothing underneath because of the colder climates. But they went to Deborah Nodelman, and Deborah came up with the idea of keeping the A2 aesthetic, mainly the collar and the pockets and a little bit of the body, but switching it out to your standard cuff, jacket, sleeve, and waist. Then she added an action back for much more dynamic movement, as well as belts on the sides so that it could be cinched up for a more fitted look.
Exactly.
Oh, and there's a double pleat as well for airing.
Right. And the organization that was commissioned to make these jackets for the first three films was a company called, at the time it was called Burns & Nathans, and now they've evolved to Wested Leather Jackets. And they are still in operation out in England, and they make amazing replica Indiana Jones film jackets using some of the same leather swatches, some of the same cuts and the patterns.
They also made jackets for a lot of other famous films, like the James Bond series.
Right.
If I remember correctly, they made one of Daniel Craig's leather jackets for
the
Bond series. They also have a wonderful replica of the U-boat jacket that Christopher Eccleston wore in his stint as the Ninth Doctor. And Barnum and Nathan's also was the clothing costumer for Star Wars.
That's right. Because there was a codpiece of Darth Vader that was recovered from like somebody's house, I think. And they flipped the codpiece over the area that's surrounding the crotch area of Darth Vader. And they found a Berman's and Nathan's tag.
Weird place to put a tag for your company, but you know.
A little bit. Well, you got to find out where it came from, and that's how it goes. But
I think my favorite Burnham and Nathan's Star Wars story has to come from Peter Cushing, who worked with them a lot because they were an English-based company, and so they did a lot of his costuming for the Hammer horror films. And he talked about in an interview how the boots, when he was Grand Moff Tarkin, never fit correctly. They were a little too tight. And he talked about how he was slightly disappointed because he said the entire time that I worked with Barnum and Nathan's, they always fitted me with such perfectly sized costume. And in this one case, it was very uncomfortable. So he talked George into letting him wear his fuzzy red slippers when it was just shot from the waist up. So whenever you see Grand Moff Tarkin threatening a young Princess Leia, just know he's wearing comfy red slippers.
And that brought in a great performance because he was in his natural state.
Oh yeah.
He was very grounded in his fuzzy slippers.
But we're not talking Star Wars, we're talking Indiana Jones.
We're not talking fuzzy slippers, we're talking leather jackets. So Wested is the official maker of the Indiana Jones jackets, and there are many other companies out there. We're going to be talking about...
Bill Kelso makes some wonderful jackets. There's
Steel and Jones.
Magnolia Clothiers.
Yes. U.S. Wings.
Yes, they have had one of the longest contracts for Indiana Jones jackets.
Yeah. And there are also Lucasfilm licensed jackets that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. There's a variety of jackets.
They were the old Todd's costume jackets.
Correct.
They're the highly sought after Tony Nowak jackets.
And Tony Nowak, if you don't know who he is, he was the maker that was commissioned by Lucasfilm to make the jackets for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
And those were some tough jackets. He built those like tanks.
Yeah, and you can still find those. There are a limited run of those jackets that are still in circulation that were made by him.
Didn't one of them just go up for sale on the Indiana Jones cosplay page?
It did. I believe it was Andrea.
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, so Andrea, if you're watching this, hopefully we just helped you sell the jacket. So let's talk about the first jacket up here.
The Raiders jacket, which is, in my opinion, the closest to the A2 design, because specifically with the pockets and the storm flap, it keeps a lot of the, and even the lapels, it keeps a lot of the stylistic choices that you see in an A2 bomber jacket. The only real thing that was added or changed from the A2 style is you have much more stylized pocket flaps, and you have hand warmers. Now, a lot of people will say, but bomber jackets in the 80s have hand warmers. Yeah, that's because of Indiana Jones.
Right.
The actual military issue, and I talked about this in my video, and A2 does not an Indiana Jones jacket make. I talked about how during the war, when A2s were commissioned, they did not have hand warmer pockets. And that was due to the fact that the U.S. military believed that if officers were seen with just hands and hand warmer pockets, it would be unbecoming of the image of an officer. So, you know, they didn't put hand warmers. But now, because of Indiana Jones and how popular these are, a lot of modern A2s have hand warmer pockets.
That's a fun fact that I didn't even know about. That's awesome. So yeah, just like you were saying, the Raiders jacket is very close to the A2 bomber jacket model, and this is Wested's legacy line. And the reason why it's a legacy jacket is that recently Wested Leather announced that they actually found a small leather sample swatch of the actual leather that they used to create the first jackets made for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
That's neat.
And that's why they're releasing the Temple of Doom jacket in Legacy, and as of, I believe today, they just released the Last Crusade Legacy jackets. So this is the closest screen-accurate leather that you're going to find for a Raiders of the Lost Ark jacket. Now, it might not necessarily be your cup of tea, it might not necessarily be the jacket that you are looking for, but for me, This is the be all and end all jacket for me. And it also, if you pay close attention to the tag right here, it's a Bermans and Nathan's tag. And this Bermans and Nathan's tag is actually vintage from the 1980s that they found in an overstocked storage area. So now they're utilizing a vintage Bermans and Nathan's tag that would have very well been on Harrison Ford's jackets. The fit and the cut is probably one of the best fitting jackets I've ever had in my life. The sleeve length is perfect, the chest size is perfect, and the way that it's also cut is in a hero style as well, which I'll be talking about with this jacket down here.
Yes, because with the Raiders jacket, there is 2 distinct cuts, if I remember correctly, or 3. There is the Hawaii cut. There is the hero, which we know is the truck chase jacket, or the Cairo jacket. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Bantu Wind jacket, isn't there?
Correct. And now the Bantu Wind jacket was the first one that Deborah Newman and Harrison Ford distressed themselves.
Yes.
At the hotel, I believe, the night before.
And Deborah also distressed the Herbert Johnson fedora when she got it.
Yep.
Because she thought it was too clean, and then she gave it to Harrison, and he wore it everywhere. In fact, there's a wonderful story that his agent told of how they were going to talk to Harrison at lunch. And he said, Harrison walks in with this dusty, old, beat-up-looking fedora on his head. And I said, what the hell is that about? To which Harrison said, oh, it's for a movie role I'm doing. And he goes, well, it's not going to go anywhere if that's what you're wearing on your head.
Joke's on them. So there you have it. But what makes a hero cut that I like is that if you see the seams on the shoulders right here, they actually drape a little bit down further than an actual tailored cut, because this is how it was cut for Harrison Ford himself. Mm-hmm. So any size jacket that you would get in the Legacy or in a Hero, it's going to have those cut dimensions that fit Harrison Ford in your particular size, if that makes any sense. So it's a great jacket. I believe it is lambskin. It is a dark lambskin, very, very soft and supple.
Which is also correct to the style of A2, because a lot of them are a dark lambskin or goatskin.
Correct. And I bought this secondhand off of eBay. And similarly enough, the jacket that I'm going to mention later on was sold by the same man who sold me this jacket. So if you're watching this, thank you very much.
That is a full circle right there.
It is a full circle. So I wore this to our first California Jones event, and it's aging very nicely. I'll let it age with time.
I noticed that. I love already the wrinkles you've got on the sleeves here.
Yeah.
It's starting to look so natural.
It's a wonderfully crafted jacket, and I love it to death. And it's definitely got a story to it, and I'm going to add to that story, but speaking of great stories, I think out of the 3, I think this jacket has the best story. And why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right, so this is a Cooper Sportswear Indiana Jones jacket from 1984. With the release of Temple of Doom, George Lucas understood that there was a want and a demand for official Indiana Jones licensed products. Now, back in 81, 82, Kenner had made the Adventures of Indiana Jones line, which was in the same scale as their Star Wars figures, but were different in the fact that they were actually articulated. So the knees could bend, and there was more action in the arms than was different from the Star Wars figures, which only had 5 points of articulation. So, of course, as we know, the main maker of the hats was Dorfman Pacific, and to this day still is.
The licensed hats.
Yeah, the licensed hats. They still hold the license for that. But Cooper wanted to create the officially licensed jackets because they claimed that they supplied the leather to Berman and Nathan's for Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. So they sent out, I think, samples of their leather. Lucasfilm really liked it, so they're like, okay, we'll send you a sample of, I think, one of the TOD jackets. That's what they said. Cooper swore up and down that they built this jacket off a Temple of Doom pattern, which I don't buy for a second.
There's a lot of discrepancies with that. If you see a Temple of Doom jacket and then put it next to this construction of a jacket, they're vastly different. Not necessarily saying that that's a bad thing, it's just, it's it's not as advertised.
This is a very interesting hybrid jacket. So, firstly, we have lapel, storm flap, and pockets that are very reminiscent to the Raiders jacket. But if you go on the back, the construction of the action pleats and that entire side, plus the belt here, for lack of a better term, is very much in the style of Temple of Doom, except we have D-rings instead of the box slide.
Which this part of the jacket, they're featured in all of the jackets, no matter what brand or model.
Mm-hmm.
There are different variances, and as you mentioned, the box brackets versus the D-rings. This one has the D-rings. This one actually has vintage boxed brackets that they were able to find.
So the switch from box bracket to D-ring happened actually with Last Crusade.
Mm-hmm.
It's very prominent, especially when Indy jumps up on the tank and Henry Sr. pops out and says, "You call this archaeology?" You can see the D-ring has actually come loose.
Right.
And so that's when it started, and then it carried on to the Crystal Skull jacket. But yeah, so the back of this is constructed like a Temple of Doom, but then you have snaps on both the top and bottom of the storm flap, which is very indicative of Last Crusade, which hadn't happened yet.
Right.
So this is a very interesting hybrid, and what's interesting about these jackets is that when Cooper made and sold them, there's actually a really wonderful commercial that came out shortly after Last Crusade, which was like, bring the adventure of Indiana Jones home with your own officially licensed Indiana Jones jacket. But these were made as early as like Temple of Doom's release. While these are really great jackets when you can find them, the fact of the matter was when they were sold in 1984 to 1989, Cooper had a problem in the fact that the majority of their stock was sent back as defective. About 75 to 80%, I think, was sent back defective. And Cooper got to a point where they actually had to declare bankruptcy because they were losing so much stock, because they had invested almost everything into this jacket.
So what was considered defective?
There were stitching inconsistencies in the sleeves. There were a lot of these side cinches that were just either came loose or not sewn on at all. Pockets were sewn shut that weren't supposed to be.
Oh, wow.
Zippers were coming undone. There was some trouble. I remember hearing about the liners not being stitched in right, so they'd be very uncomfortable to wear. These are mass-produced jackets, so it tends to happen.
Right.
But then you come across a jacket like this, which is pretty well crafted. I mean, these are really tough jackets.
Yeah, pictures don't do it justice. I mean, seeing this and feeling this in person, it's definitely something that you wouldn't consider to be mass produced.
No, and there's such wonderful weathering with this jacket. I actually got this on eBay in the late stages of 2020. I want to say around maybe August I got this jacket, and I've been wearing it ever since, and I love it. The left sleeve is my favorite because of the striations here in the leather. Just looks fantastic. But so Cooper went into big trouble, and there was a saving grace in Disney, because Disney was about to open up Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Forbidden Eye, and they wanted to sell jackets. Mm-hmm. So basically they told Cooper, we'll take on your stock, or we'll take on the build here,
the
manufacture, and you don't have to worry about a thing. So they did that, and the 75 to 80% of these jackets that were sent back defective were destroyed.
Wow.
They were torn apart and burned. Wow. You can read a little bit about these on the Indie Gear site. That's where I got a lot of my information from. But there's not too much information about these jackets, which is weird. Though Indie Gear does a very good job of talking about the financial situation that Cooper went through. The actual story of how this was built is still kind of a mystery. This is an XL, but it fits almost like a 2X. These were built in like a size larger than they're actually marketed as.
And what's the skin on this? Do you know?
I think it's just a basic cowhide.
Basic cowhide.
But these are highly sought after.
Absolutely.
There are two versions. So when Disney picked up the manufacture, there is a really great logo of the Indiana Jones. So it says Indiana Jones, and there's a plane flying through the logo. Very classic of Disney. And it was always with the Cooper jackets. It was just always there. Disney picked it up, and then after a while, they scrapped it because in 2008, with the release of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they rebuilt this jacket so it was a little bit more screen accurate, for lack of a better term.
For Crystal Skull.
For Crystal Skull. And they look great.
Yeah.
You can actually find those 2008 jackets really easily.
You can find them on eBay. I found them on eBay myself, and I feel like you were about to mention, because one of the biggest differences that I noticed between the Cooper jacket and the Disney licensed jackets, the tag that says Indiana Jones on the back
is a leather tag that is more in the Indiana Jones font with the 2008 jackets.
But does it say Indiana Jones, or does it say Lucasfilm?
So it's interesting. So it says Indiana Jones in big, bold text, and then underneath it says copyrighted Lucasfilm 2008.
Got it.
But for the longest time, because some of these were already made, Disney just sold these 84 jackets as is. Mm-hmm. You could find them. I remember seeing this specific type of jacket in Disney stores up until about 2006.
I remember seeing them as well.
And then as soon as Crystal Skull was announced and we got the first looks at Indy, then the 2008 jackets came.
Right, which I really remember seeing.
Mm-hmm. And but these are a little bit more difficult to find. These can run you anywhere between $150 to $250. I got mine for $157.
Which actually isn't a bad price.
No, not for a leather jacket that's constructed like this.
Yeah, and with basically how endangered this jacket is as it is, I should say. I feel like the price that you paid for is because these jackets are a lot easier to come by. Yes. So I think the demand for them is a little bit more prevalent. So that's why it's probably a little bit more pricier than what you would find like on eBay or any sort of indie cosplay pages that are willing to sell this jacket.
Something else I forgot. The difference, a big difference between the 84 jackets and the 2008 jackets is actually the liners. So with the liner of this one, it's your basic cotton. Right. And then there's nylon sleeves. When the 2008 jackets came out, it was straight nylon on the inside.
Ooh.
As from what I remember reading, to keep it airier and a little bit cooler. But as we know,
nylon.
You're wearing nylon with leather. That's not a good idea.
No, I've done that many times
I've worn this in summer. It breathes pretty well, but the sleeves are just murder.
Right.
I've heard a lot of stories of people who do have these vintage jackets, taking them into tailors and switching the nylon out for cotton that's very close to the original liner.
Right, and I wouldn't blame them whatsoever. And I guess pointing that out as well, both of the jackets that I have in my personal hand, they both have 100% cotton liners as well, which is probably why it's a lot nicer to wear like on a warmer day. Mm-hmm. Like tonight, for example, it's nice and it's got a cool breeze. I wouldn't mind putting this jacket on whatsoever and go out for the night. But this is a great jacket. This is a great find.
And you can find these, it really distressed because of how many people wore them in the 80s.
Right.
So there's a lot of great mileage on them already.
Yeah.
I think I've only, sorry to interrupt. No. I think there's only like one or two I've run across of these that are in like mint condition. And they tend to be like very dark, almost this color, but slightly lighter brown.
Right. But if Indiana Jones rolls around in the dirt. He gets dragged by a truck. So Ideally, you want your jacket to look like this, But this, like Nathan said, this is from 1984. So that's just going to come with time. So hopefully, when the time comes, this jacket, my new jacket, is going to look somewhat similar to this. But speaking of something that's already pre-distressed, we have an example here of a jacket that is already in pre-distressed. We'll go ahead and just switch this out. Perfect. And then I'll put that right down there.
Alrighty.
Excellent. Showcasing Nathan's hat.
80 Vintage Junior.
Perfect. So this is also a Wested jacket, but this is a Wested Hero model. And to kind of give you a bit of recap as to what a hero is, you have your standard stock sizes in West End, which are ready-made jackets that can be sent to you within a matter of a week or two. These, on the other hand, are custom-made, and they are more tailored to your size in particular, as far as the sleeves, the chest size, the length of the jacket itself, the width, and everything. But being that it's a hero as well, you see the cut, like the seams off of the shoulder that are reminiscent of how it was cut for Harrison Ford.
And you can see that on the Cooper jacket too. It copies that style.
It does. I can see that.
Which I was really impressed by.
Yeah, Cooper jackets are great.
Took it out of the box. I was impressed with how many accurate details there are, and then just like the small inaccurate details, but you don't really notice or care for.
You know, you could say that they're inaccurate, but I would also argue and say that they're ambiguous. Because you can make this jacket and wear it as a Last Crusade or as a Raiders or as a Crystal Skull. You know,
exactly.
So you're kind of getting more bang for your buck that way. This is kind of along the same lines. This is a Raiders model jacket.
Yeah, through and through this is Raiders.
But this definitely has the patina and the distress that is similar to a Cooper jacket that you would probably find on more of a Crystal Skull.
I was going to say this has a Crystal Skull color to it, and I like that.
Yeah, and you can definitely see the grain on here and the striations and the patina and whatnot. This is pre-distressed lambskin.
Oh, so this is the pre-distressed models they have.
Correct.
Okay.
And so don't let the pre-distressed name fool you. It may look pre-distressed, but the softness of the leather is exactly the same as the softness of this.
It's very supple.
It is extremely soft, extremely supple. It is well taken care of. The only discrepancy that I have with this jacket is that the sleeve length is just a hair long for me, so I just go ahead and fold the sleeves up, and looks like they were tailored this way. I took this jacket with me to Walt Disney World in January this year. And I don't know what it was and how and why it happened, but it was one of the coldest winters in Florida. The high was just under 30, and the low was I should say the high was like in the high 30s, and the low was like just 30 or like maybe 29. And
I'm getting chilly just thinking about it.
It was amazing. Like, my mom and I had an amazing time going, and I wore this jacket every single day along with like 4 other layers underneath because we didn't anticipate how cold it was going to be. But I received so many compliments on this jacket.
It's a beautiful jacket.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it fits very well, and it's very, very comfortable. This definitely is like a jacket that I would not mind like sleeping in, you know.
This would make a great Mystery of the Blues jacket.
Absolutely, with the scars. It's a great winter wear.
It is.
And this also has a cotton liner, and both of these jackets actually have the silver zipper, which is how it originally came before the costumers for Raiders and subsequent films needed to distress and I guess brass up.
I was going to say they were nickel-plated, weren't they?
They were nickel-plated, and compared to your Cooper jacket, that's more of a brass.
Yeah.
And so they needed to darken up the silver because it reflected too poorly off of the camera. So if you look inside, if you want to flip this over for me, you see that it says the Hero Jacket by Peter Boatwright. And Peter Boatwright was the late, great Peter Boatwright. He was the maker of these Indiana Jones jackets, and up until just a few years ago when he passed away, he was still on hand helping with the consultations and the actual making of the jackets.
He, as far as I remember, he was working on the Last Crusade hero just before he passed, wasn't he?
Yes, that's true. I think it was released in honor of him.
Yes,
after he had passed. The same shape pocket flaps that you see on the Raiders jacket. It's got more of a point on the bottom, which is very indicative of Raiders.
They kind of they're very close to my Cooper pockets.
Yes.
It just these go a little lower.
Yes, and I would probably these might be just a hair wider than your Cooper jackets.
Just a hair.
But that could also mean because of the actual size of the jacket as well. Because this is definitely a longer torso. And on the back of this as well, it has the these are brass, but these are the square buckles. These aren't the D-rings, and which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, this jacket is absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, I haven't worn this jacket as often lately after receiving my legacy jacket because it's like
it's like when you got your Herbert Johnson, you know?
Exactly. Even though I'm sitting next proudly with my hooffoot and my Herbert Johnson is inside, I wore it today out in public and I got a lot of compliments on it.
He did.
But those are the 3 jackets that we have to share with you today, and yeah, I mean they're such an integral part of Indy's gear, and finding a good and reliable jacket is very, very important, because you can go years and years and years and buying a close enough jacket, and then you're just going to end up buying another close enough and another close enough. So you might as well invest and get the real deal where it'll last past your lifetime.
Oh yeah.
So we're just so grateful that you decided to come and watch this with us on our show and tell Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan, for coming out.
Thank you so much for having me, Morgan.
I really appreciate it.
I hope to show up again for one of these.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you have any jackets that you'd like to share, I know that a lot of people have quite an extensive collection of jackets, so we would love to see like different types of leathers and different types of sizes and shapes and whatnot, and different makers, and we want to hear from you on what your favorite jackets are.
What's your daily wear Indy jacket?
What's your daily wear? Like, even on a hot day, what do you like to wear on a hot day with your Indy jacket? And let's see some pictures. We would love to see that.
Yeah.
So just a quick recap. On Saturday, June 12th, we are holding our 40th anniversary Raiders of the Lost Ark screening event in Chino Hills.
So excited.
And Nathan's going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to have Trent Ryan from Colorado coming.
With the Colorado Jones boys.
With the Colorado Jones boys representing. And it's going to be a great time. We're going to be meeting up at the Chino Hills Park at about 3 p.m., I believe.
Yes.
And then there are 2 screenings of Raiders, one at 2 p.m. and then one at 8 o'clock p.m. You're going to go to the 8 o'clock?
I'm going to the 2.
You're going to the 2, and you're going to come back for the to the park and hang out with us until our group goes to the 8 o'clock showing. So, well, thank you for proving my point, because if you're seeing the 2 p.m. show and the movie is over, please come back to the park and hang out with us until the 8 o'clock people have to go and see the 8 o'clock movie. But we look forward to seeing you there. There's going to be vendors selling some pins and stickers and cards, and there's going to be whip makers coming out and selling their gear. And there's going to be a lot of photo ops, photo booths, camera people, and
beautiful stuff going on.
So we hope to see you there. And yeah, you got any last words?
Fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
Fortune and glory. Awesome. Let's hope that recorded. Yeah, it did.
Oh.